This screencast is going to help you understand how you could possibly summarize the entire plot of your novel in just 5 or so sentences. We're going to start with just the main components that have got to be in a plot summary. In order to come up with this list, I had to determine importance. I had to sit down and think to myself, what would the reader of my essay need to know at a bare minimum about my novel in order to understand all of the things I'm going to be talking about in my essay about this novel? What's the bare minimum of background information that the reader of my essay will need to know about my novel? Because as I'm sure you've been taught in the past, you must assume that the reader of your essay has not read the novel yet. They should be able to understand your ideas in your essay without having to have read the same book as you. Okay? So, key components of a plot summary. I determine importance, and I think, okay, number one, we need to know the protagonist. We need to know the main character of the book, because you're probably going to be talking about this person at some point in your essay. And your reader needs to know who you're talking about. They need to know that this is the person that the book centers around. You got to set them up with that information. They also need to understand the central conflict or conflicts that were going on in your novel. This helps the reader of your essay because they need to know and understand why your characters are doing what they're doing. When you talk about an action or an event that takes place in the book, understanding the conflict that this entire novel centers around will help your essay reader understand why these characters are doing what they're doing. And you need to mention the climax. Now, you don't necessarily need to give a spoiler and say exactly how it's all resolved, but you do need to mention the highest point of tension because it shows what all of your characters' decisions are building up to. All of these little moments along the way are leading up to this moment. And finally, if there's anything that's unique to your book that you think will kind of round out your summary and help connect this mentioning of a protagonist, a conflict, and a climax together, you can include that. But only, and I say this here, only if they relate to your thesis. You don't want to be bringing in any random details about the book. We really need to work on separating trash from treasure in the summary, determining importance, only the bare minimum that people will need to understand in order to be able to follow the ideas in your essay. So I'm modeling this for you with 2 books. One book is one that I know all of you read last year in 7th grade, The Outsiders. And then I also did it with the book Divergent because I know that a bunch of you have read that this year, and specifically Connor requested that I do Divergent, so I did that for him and for you guys too. So let's take a look at The Outsiders. I've got my list of key components for a summary, and we'll just go through it quickly. The protagonist, as you know, is Ponyboy. The conflict, I think we need to bring up the tensions between the Greasers and the Socs, that Johnny kills Bob in the gang fight, and that escalates the tension. And I also feel like the family conflict between Ponyboy and Dally is a really large conflict going on throughout the book. The climax of the book is when Ponyboy reads the letter that he finds in his copy of Gone with the Wind that Johnny wrote to him before his death. And in that letter, Johnny tells Ponyboy, stay gold. Remember that part? And he says, look for the sunsets. There's good things in life. You can have a good life, Pony. If you try, you can turn your life into something worthwhile. And that is a change. That's where Ponyboy kind of flips that switch and realizes that he is in control of his life. He can make good out of this crap that he's been given to start his life with. So that's really that turning point for that character that everything builds up to. A couple unique details. Ponyboy's raised by his brothers. His parents are dead. Johnny's parents are abusive. The book is in the 1960s. Those are just all kind of connectors I could possibly use to weave this summary together. So let's take a look at my summary paragraph. I believe this is 5 sentences long. And you can see that I wove in the title and the author into my summary. S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders explores the societal tension between rich and poor and the importance of loyalty between family and friends. Set during the 1960s, this novel follows rival gangs, the Greasers, from the wrong side of the tracks, and the Socs from the affluent neighborhoods nearby. The plot centers around Ponyboy, a greaser who is raised by his brothers and his best friend Johnny, who comes from an abusive home. When Johnny kills a Soch in a gang fight, Ponyboy discovers who he can truly count on. He also comes to understand that some problems are universal, regardless of social status, and that he has the ability to make something worthwhile out of his life. There's a lot of information in there. And one of the ways you can sneak more information into a summary is by writing complex sentences. You see here that I could have said, The Outsiders is set during the 1960s, period. The novel follows rival gang, the Greasers, on like that. But instead, I can weave that in. That can just be a dependent clause at the beginning of my sentence, set during the 1960s, and then you go on and say what you want to say about the novel and the gangs and all of that. But you can kind of weave in and sneak in some more information if you write more complex sentences. Let's take a look at Divergent for another example of a different way to do this. Well, it's the same way, but just different novel. Our protagonist is Triss. The conflict is that the erudite faction is secretly plotting to manipulate the members of Dauntless into carrying out their plan to invade Abnegation and establish control over the other factions. Climax is when Triss and Tobias shut down the erudite simulation and they free the remaining Dauntless from the mind control. Sorry. Probably should have told you if you haven't read Divergent yet and you want to, you should stop stop the screencast. Unique details. First of all, we have to discuss at some point in our summary that this is a society split into factions. You have to mention that. That's not normal. That's unique. We should also bring up the fact that Triss had to choose her faction, and you definitely need to bring up the fact that she's divergent and that she has to hide it. That is not a good thing. You need to kind of explain what that is, what divergent means. So let's take a look at my summary for Divergent. I will tell you this one I think is 6 sentences long, so it's a little bit longer. I had a hard time getting it down. Maybe you could do better than me. Let's see. Set in a dystopian Chicago that is divided into 5 factions, each dedicated to the development of a specific character trait, Veronica Roth's Divergent follows Beatrice Pryor as she uncovers the plans of one faction to gain control over the others. All 16-year-olds must choose a faction, and Beatrice must decide between staying with her family and being who she really is. She makes the daring choice to leave her family's faction. During the competitive initiation that follows, Beatrice, now called Triss, discovers that her aptitude tests matched her with several factions equally. She is divergent, a dangerous quality that she must keep hidden. As she discovers discontent and a covert plan that threatens to unravel her seemingly perfect society, she also learns that her own secret might help her save those she loves. So you can see, if you've read this book, I'm not giving away everything. I'm not giving away most of it, but it's enough that a person has a general sense of what this book is about, the struggles the characters are going through, and they also understand what it means to be divergent at a basic level, and they understand that that divergence in her is going to become an asset. It's going to become something that actually she could use to help save people. It's going to become something that, not just something that she should hide because it's dangerous, but because it could also be a good thing. Okay? So you can you can go back and forth in the screencast if you want to slow down and you want to take a look again at the list of the key components and then see how they connect to the actual summary, and pause the screencast at any time to just kind of slow down and read over these examples. But this paragraph and this paragraph are 2 examples of how to condense the key elements of a plot, which are here, into about 5 sentences for your lead paragraph in your essay.